And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this YouthMappers session on how to write memorable cover letters. This is hosted as a series, as part of a series of workshops through the Everywhere She Maps program of YouthMappers. So just before we get started, I want to give a brief introduction to to Everywhere She Maps. So this is a program that is really designed to increase women's participation in the YouthMappers network. Our aim is to strengthen the inclusiveness, not just of the YouthMappers community, but also more broadly of the geospatial community, and make sure that women's perspectives are equally represented. So through the program, we are building technical capacity of women's student mappers, enhancing all students' professional development skills and networking skills. And then we're also contributing to various mapping projects in our focus regions that add data to OpenStreetMap, which is relevant to women's needs. And while the title of the program has the word she, just want everyone to know that this program, many elements are inclusive of youth mappers of all genders. And some of the elements are specifically for youth mappers who are women or whose gender is non-binary or non-conforming in some other way. We founded Everywhere She Maps on the 5 pillars listed here. So as an organization and as a community, we believe that everywhere women map, these really positive outcomes are generated, which is part of the reason we're investing so much in empowering women mappers. And I have here on the screen just some of our core activities, which include what we're doing here today, professional and career development, which includes many workshops that you'll find online, as well as the YouthMappers Academy, which is hosted online as well. We have been piloting an internship matching program to pair qualified YouthMappers students with hiring organizations. And we also have 8 regional ambassadors. You may know these women in your own region, or you may be familiar with our outreach regional ambassador program. The Everywhere She Maps ambassadors are specifically tasked with helping our chapters increase women's participation and leadership. And just an FYI, I'll be putting out a call to for applications for next year's regional ambassadors very soon. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in maybe serving in that position. And we also, as I mentioned, contribute to and manage a variety of mapping campaigns. Right now, our big focus is a campaign to map rural villages in Sierra Leone and the existing energy infrastructure so that the government can determine where to increase access to the power grid in rural Sierra Leone. And we're exploring and probably going to launch soon a project in Uganda around mapping water point data. And finally, we really hope next year to hold a Women in Technology Leadership Fellowship program. That's been on hold due to COVID because we really feel strongly about doing that in person. So to be determined, keep an eye out for that as well. And then finally, just wanted to let you know, as I mentioned, this workshop is just one in a series of additional workshops. So I have the link here on the screen. I'll also email it to you and follow up where you can find information about all of our upcoming workshops and professional development sessions. We have a lot of awesome guest speakers coming. And these are all the categories that we're addressing in these sessions. And right now, the current series will be held through January of 2022. So please register for those. One awesome kind of perk of participating is if you attend at least 3 of the workshops in the series and you complete the evaluation forms for all of those and give us your email address, then I will do a personalized resume review for you and provide you with feedback on that resume or that CV. So make sure you're also filling out the evaluations, which of course I will share and follow up as well. All right. So let's dive into our agenda. First, we're going to be talking about the importance of, actually introductions we'll begin with, and then we'll go into the importance and definition of a cover letter, talk about some of the components, and give you tips on formatting and writing the content as well. So to our friends who have joined in the last few minutes, just a quick reminder, please put any questions that you have in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. Please fill out the poll that I have active on the screen. I'm going to close that in a few minutes, but we really appreciate your answers to the poll, which are anonymous. So thanks. Okay, so to kick us off, I would love if everyone in the Zoom could introduce yourself in the chat. Feel free to include whatever information you want, but at least your name, your university or your YouthMappers chapter, and the country where you live. If you're a chapter leader or you have some other fun fact you want to share, we'd love to hear about that as well. And then introducing myself, I am the program director for Everywhere She Maps of YouthMappers. I am based in the US, in Ohio right now, originally from Michigan in the US. Just a few facts about me. I am a former Peace Corps volunteer, so I served in Guinea and I lived there for 2 years working on public health projects. I have been involved in humanitarian mapping and the Missing Maps project since 2014. My degree, I have a master's in business administration. And then just recently, I was elected to the board of the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. So I'm excited to see all of your introductions coming through as well. I'm going to end our poll. Thanks everyone who participated. All right. So starting with the basics, what is a cover letter? It's a one-page document that usually accompanies your resume or your CV when you're applying for an internship, a job, even maybe a scholarship or admissions to a college or other program like that. So you're going to use this to introduce your work history, some of your professional skills, and really to convey your interest in applying for the job. So one important thing to remember about cover letters is that they are not just kind of recreations of your resume. They're not just your resume in a letter format. They are a very different document from your resume that's supposed to complement it. So really, you're going to write this for any job to which you apply, any internship. Some job postings will say a cover letter is not required. I still highly recommend submitting a cover letter, even when it's optional. I always do, because it really shows that you're willing to go above and beyond, and that you truly care about the job and you're willing to put in that extra time, and it can help you stand out from other candidates. And then the other really, really important thing that I want you to take away from this workshop, if nothing else, is that you must customize your cover letters for every job to which you apply. It shouldn't be a form letter. Every job, even if you're applying for very similar positions at different organizations, every job, every organization will have its own unique characteristics or requirements, and you want to make sure you're really addressing those. And the worst thing that you can do is have a form cover letter and send that cover letter with the name of the wrong job or the wrong company to the wrong person. I have reviewed hundreds of resumes and cover letters throughout my career as a hiring manager, and you'd be surprised at the number of cover letters I receive that have a different company or a different job title from what I'm hiring for. And for me, that's an immediate discard, because clearly that candidate didn't really take the time to be careful about their letter. Okay, so cover letters, as I mentioned, are a complement to your resume. They can really help you elaborate or highlight certain experiences or skills that are most important. And they can clarify some parts of your resume that might be unclear to an employer. They're also really important to showcase your communication skills, which are going to be key to pretty much any job that you might be applying for, whether it's a very technical um, job related to analysis or computer programming, something like that, or whether it's a job managing projects or managing teams. Any job you have, the employer is going to want to know that you can um, send a message, that you can express yourself in written word. And they can also, if you don't have a ton of experience and you think that your resume is maybe a little light on the experience side because you're a student, your cover letter can be another great place for you to highlight skills that you've built outside of just traditional jobs. Okay, so I have just a kind of a picture showing an outline of a cover letter and all the different components here. We're going to go through each of these in more detail, but generally the letter will include your contact information as well as the information of the hiring organization. You're going to have a salutation or a greeting and an introductory paragraph. You might have 1 to 2 body paragraphs, followed by your closing or your call to action, which is where you're going to ask the person who's reading the cover letter to give you an interview. And then you'll have just a very simple sign off as well. So looking into contact information, you'll want to use the same font as you have for your resume so that the 2 documents look consistent. If there are other unique formatting aspects of your resume that you can bring into your cover letter, I recommend doing that as well. So you don't want them to look totally different because they'll probably be reviewed at the same time. And make sure you're adding your name, email address, your phone number, and your mailing address. You can include a link to your LinkedIn profile, especially if you're sending the cover letter digitally, because they'll be able to click that link. And then just like any formal business letter, you want to make sure you're including the date that you wrote it and contact information for the hiring manager. So you'll want to include the first and last name of the person, the company's address and phone number, and if you have it, an email address as well for the company or hiring manager. If you don't have every single one of those points of contact information, that's okay, especially the email address for the hiring manager. You may not have that directly, so it's okay to skip that as well. And I am not going to go over in detail like the formatting or how to exactly build out the format of a business letter or a cover letter because it's so easily available online. If you just search for cover letter templates or examples, you'll easily be able to see how to do that. All right, so after contact information, we're going to go right into the greeting or the salutation. It's really ideal if you can greet the hiring manager by name within the cover letter. If you're not sure of their name, do some digging, check around the company website or LinkedIn, maybe the human resources page of the company, or even feel welcome to email human resources. If you know their name, but you're not sure if they prefer Mr. or Miss or Doctor, if you're not aware of that, just feel free to skip that prefix and write Dear Emily Hopkins is the example here. And, you know, if you can't find any specific names, you can just write Dear Hiring Manager, Dear Marketing Manager, or GIS Manager. But really you want to avoid as much as possible using a super generic greeting like to whom it may concern. If you truly don't know anyone's name or much information, it's okay to use that, but just make it a last resort. Try to find out what you can about who will be reading the cover letter. All right, and then next you're going to go right into the introductory part. So this is really important because you want to grab the attention of your reader and make sure that they continue reading your cover letter from start to finish. So in your introduction, you really want to grab their attention. You also need to include some practical information like the job position that you're applying for and the company name. So make sure you always include the title of the job that you want to apply for. And you're really going to be discussing in this paragraph your intention in applying for the role. So you can do this in a variety of ways. You can express your love or passion for the company. Maybe it's a company you've worked with in some way before, or that you have participated in one of their projects, or you've just known of them and been a huge fan and admirer of that company for many years. So that's one thing that you can use to really grab the manager's attention. You can also highlight a really important past achievement. So if you have a big achievement and it's directly relevant to the job that you're applying for, maybe that's how you grab their attention. Showing some really amazing quantitative results, for example. And then finally, another way to grab their attention is expressing your passion for your work. So you can talk about, what led you to pursue a career in this field? Was there a really pivotal moment or maybe a series of moments? And again, just like your resume, your cover letter is not your autobiography. Remember, it's a marketing document. So approach it that way. Don't feel like you need to tell the employer every one of your passions and dreams. But just make sure your passion for this company and this job does come across. After the introductory paragraph, you're going to go into the body paragraphs. So this should be about 1 to 2 paragraphs, optional for you, whichever you want to do. And you're going to be providing evidence in these paragraphs that you're an excellent candidate for the job. So you're not going to copy and paste information, from your resume, but you're rather going to expand on things that are in your resume and give more context to your experiences and your skills. If you don't have a lot of professional work experience, maybe you're a student or a recent graduate, you can highlight some of the skills that you built while you were earning your degree. If you did a particular thesis or a dissertation project that was really relevant. Talk about maybe some of the awards or the scholarships that you earned, but don't just list them. Provide context and really explain to the employer what skills you have that allowed you to earn that scholarship or that award. Okay, so I know we've had a lot of content very quickly. I'm going to pause for a moment and just want to see if there are any questions in the room. And if not, no worries. And thank you so much to everyone who introduced themselves. Really, really appreciate that as well. All right. Cool. So I have on this page an example of a body paragraph, some content from a sample cover letter. So I'll go ahead and read that out loud for everyone. I recently graduated summa cum laude, 3.7 GPA, with a BS in accounting from the University of Maryland. During my final 2 years there, I served as treasurer for the Student Government Committee, managing a $5,000 budget, developing internal controls and financial management policies, and providing accurate financial reporting. I'm excited to bring a significant amount of real-world experience to your entry-level role and quickly prove my worth. So want to pause there for a moment. You can feel free to type your answers in the chat or unmute yourself, but I want to ask you all, what do you think worked well in this example of a body paragraph? Are there any elements or words or phrases that you think do a particularly good job? Or just if you don't think it's a good paragraph, I would love to know about that as well. So just looking for some feedback. And I did not write this, so I won't be offended if you think it needs improvement. But just take a minute, read that paragraph for yourself, and let's kind of dissect it and go through what works well. All right, is anyone brave enough to type in the chat or unmute yourself and make a few comments about what you liked or didn't like about this paragraph? Okay, awesome. We have from Gemelli. Thanks, Gemelli, wrote in the chat, the person indicated their responsibilities, which is good. Yes, I absolutely agree. I love that the paragraph includes some of the responsibilities. And Kobe also said, mentioning the honors that were achieved. Yes, the Latin honors, which is the summa cum laude, that works well in this paragraph as well. So that shows off their academic abilities. And Kobe also really appreciates the brief and concise explanation of the most important achievements during college. Yes, I would also agree with that, Kobe. I think in just 3 sentences, this person really gets across a lot of what they were able to achieve and what they could bring to the table. All right, would anyone change part of this paragraph? Would you add anything, take anything away? If you're not sure, that's okay too, no worries. Gemelli asks, is adding the GPA necessary? I think if you're going to put the Latin honors, like if you're going to include something like summa cum laude in a paragraph, it's totally fine to include the GPA because that honor is based on your GPA. So you just want to clarify like why you received it, but it totally would have been fine as well for this person to write, I recently graduated with honors with a BS in accounting from the University of Maryland. So definitely not a requirement to put your GPA on your cover letter or even on your resume if you have a GPA that's a bit lower than you would like. Good question. Oh, and Armel asked me, and I'm going to answer this for everyone because probably other people have questions as well. What is a GPA? Yes, thank you. I shouldn't just assume that people know these certain terms. So in some countries, the GPA, it stands for grade point average. And so the grades that you receive in school are associated with a certain number, and then it's averaged out. Usually an A is equivalent to the number 4, a B is equivalent to the number 3, etc. So when we see on the screen that the person had a 3.7 GPA, that means to someone who's familiar with the term that they got many A's in their college, and mostly all A's and then some B's in their classes. So that just is a very quick indicator of the kinds of grades they received when they were in school. Your country might have a totally different system for displaying that, which of course, would recommend that you use, just depending on your context. Good question. And Puspa Chad also mentions in the chat that they like this person's confidence. They're really proving their worth. And they say at the end, they're confident that they can prove their worth at the organization. And I agree. I do really like the confidence that comes across. Okay, so we'll keep moving on. Some options for things you could include in these body paragraphs: any relevant part-time or full-time work, volunteering, of course, YouthMappers experiences, and student government, other student clubs or community clubs or organizations. If you're an athlete or participate in arts, just any other relevant activity or hobby, especially if it shows off some of your leadership skills, communication, teamwork skills, because those things don't come across in your resume quite as well as they can come across in a cover letter. And then it might be helpful as well to just give a quick explanation of some of your short-term or long-term goals, just a sentence or two, so the employer can really see that this job fits in with your short and long-term goals, because they're probably going to want to keep you around for a while. Oh, and we had one more comment in the chat. Thank you so much. This is from Pascalina. The precise yet informative nature of the paragraph is so intriguing. I wouldn't hesitate to go through this applicant's document and possibly invite them for an interview. That's great. Yeah, that's a really wonderful endorsement. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, all right. So following the body paragraphs, you're going to end with your closing and your call to action. And you've already spent so much time working on your introduction and your body paragraphs. You want to make sure you really close the letter in a strong way. Okay, so here is where you're going to ask the person who's reading your cover letter to invite you to an interview. You shouldn't be shy about this. It's very normal practice. So don't think that you're being too bold or too forward. This is kind of what they're expecting from you. And if you don't ask for an interview, they might question why. So you first absolutely want to thank them for the time that they spent reviewing your application. You can do a one sentence, very quick summary of why you would be a great hire, and really reiterate your excitement about the opportunity. You want to very politely ask them for that invite to an interview, and make sure you include your email and the phone number where you can be reached. So here's an example. Thank you for spending time reviewing my application. I deeply believe that my skills and qualifications make me an ideal candidate for the 5th grade science teacher position at Ironside Academy. I'm extremely motivated to join your school and look forward to discussing my candidacy in an interview. So the only thing this is missing is contact information, but that's pretty straightforward, so didn't need to include that. Okay, and then the easiest part, breathe a sigh of relief that you made it this far. Just do a nice sign off with a professional salutation. Any of the examples on this slide would work really well. And please know I'll send you these slides and follow up so you can review any of these at any time. Then you want to just go ahead and insert 2 spaces between the salutation and type your full name. In the past, before most things were digital, people would actually physically sign their cover letter and then mail it. However, since you'll most likely be just uploading your cover letter or emailing it, you can just type your full name and that counts as a signature as well. All right, so just a few quick formatting tips. Remember, you want to keep the cover letter brief. No one is going to want to read 2 or more pages worth of cover letter content. People don't have time for that. So make sure you're keeping it about 200 to 400 words. You want to have it single spaced and make sure everything fits on a single page. Now, I also recommend for both your resume and your cover letter, uploading them or emailing them as PDFs rather than Word documents, for example. That will make sure that the formatting that you've chosen remains in place, because if someone has a different version of Microsoft Word on their computer and they open your Word document, your formatting that you spent so much time on could just not even show up for them, or it could look very strange. So I don't have this written on the screen, but make sure you're converting everything to a PDF before you submit it. Recommend you use a 12 size font, use something very standard and professional. Make sure it's the same font as your resume. Leave enough margin. So even if your cover letter fits on one page, if you have almost no margins, that's still too much. And then, leave a space between each paragraph or each part of the letter as well. Sometimes you will need to submit a cover letter right directly as an email rather than as a letter that you put in a Word document or a Google document. So it's a fairly similar process with a few differences. So you don't need to include like the date or the contact information of the hiring manager or the address of the company. Make sure that your contact information is at the bottom of the email. So obviously they'll have your email address, but make sure you're putting that again at the bottom along with your phone number where you can be reached. Use a professional subject line. Usually a job application will ask you to use a specific format for the subject line. Like they might want you to say the title of the job dash your name or something along those lines. So make sure you're reading the job description really carefully and following whatever format they ask you for the subject line. If they don't specify a format, I would just do name of the job or the job title dash your name. You can leave it at that, or you can add dash job application. So moving a little bit away from the technical formatting, want to talk now about the content and the tone in more detail. So you want to use a really friendly and simple tone when you're writing a cover letter. Don't be overly formal or use complicated or technical vocabulary just for the sake of doing that, or because it might make you think it might make you look smarter. You want to make your cover letter enjoyable to read and easy to read for the hiring manager. So here's an example of, simple word. You could say advantageous, but why not just say helpful, a little more personal and friendly. But you don't want to be too casual. So I wouldn't use a lot of contractions like the word don't. I would say instead do not. So here are 2 examples of like paragraphs that could be from the same cover letter from the same job, but they're in 2 different tones. So the first is very personable and it's relaxed and it's easy to read. And I'll read it out loud to you all. It says, I'm thrilled to be applying for the customer service position at company name. Having been a customer service representative for over 5 years at Walmart, I'm an expert at using Zendesk to manage and resolve customer inquiries and complaints. Very easy to understand, and I can immediately grasp what that person's trying to tell me, and it has a clear evidence of their experience. Now, the same paragraph that is in way too formal of language, is, it is with great interest that I apply for the open customer service position posted by your company on Indeed. I possess the requisite skill set to ably perform the customer service duties described in the job requirements. First of all, that doesn't show me any evidence that you actually do have those skills, unlike the first paragraph. It's also just kind of boring and not that interesting to read. Remember, hiring managers are humans too, and they want things that are easy to read during their busy days. A few things to avoid. You don't need to put a picture of yourself on your cover letter. That's just taking up precious space that you could be writing content. Make sure you're not using kind of an odd size for your document or any really loud, bright colors. You don't need to include any of the following personal details that I have on the slide. And especially, this kind of goes for any point in a job application process. If someone asks you a reason you left your previous job, of course, you want to answer that honestly, but you never want to kind of be super critical of your previous job or your previous supervisor, because that could be a red flag to someone who might be wanting to hire you. So even if you quit a previous job because your boss was horrible or you just had a terrible experience, avoid talking about that when you're applying for new jobs. Instead, you can just say, I was just searching for new opportunities. I'm looking to advance in my career and to have a new experience. And you can just leave it at that without giving the details. That's not specific to cover letters, but it's a good piece of advice I received many years ago and have used. All right, and then I have on this slide a little checklist that you can use for yourself anytime you're about to send a cover letter. Before you send it, make sure you can answer yes to all of these questions. Is it clear? Does it state exactly what I want to state? Is the letter concise? Did I use the fewest possible words to get my message across? Is it well organized? And then am I really showing evidence to the employer of the contribution I can make? So I also always have a friend or a trusted member of my network or even a family member read my cover letters before I send them to help me check for any misspellings or grammatical errors, but also to make sure that someone else who's reading it can understand what I'm trying to say and get my message. Okay, and that is all of the content that I have about cover letters. Very happy to take any questions that you might have at this time, or if you want to share any of your experiences or tips that you've learned about cover letters, either in the chat or unmuting yourself, please go ahead. Yeah, Chisholm, I see you raised your hand. Feel free to unmute or just type something in the chat.
0000. Okay, good afternoon, Connie. I was thinking, is adding a passport or a photograph to the cover letter, is it necessary or is it something that should be optional?
I'm sorry, can you repeat? I heard part of the question. Were you asking, is the photograph, should that be optional?
Yes, is it necessary?
Is it necessary? I don't, like, in my experience, a photograph is not necessary for a cover letter. And in fact, in some places where you're applying, like for example, if you're applying to something in the US, you would never want to include a photograph because employers here in the US, it's illegal for them to consider your race or like the color of your skin or just your gender, what you look like. It's illegal for us to consider any of that kind of information in a job application. So if you include a picture, it's actually risky. The hiring manager might just choose to not even review your application because they might be worried about a potential lawsuit if they looked at your photograph. So to me, it's not necessary. At most, it's optional. I know other countries have very different, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of standards or practices, and employers there do expect a photograph. So just, make sure you're doing research about the country where the job is or where the employer is, and follow whatever kind of customs are normal there. Good question. Any other questions? Now is your opportunity. You can also ask questions about resumes or other part of the job search. If not, we can end a few minutes early. Just as a reminder, I am about to send you an evaluation form. If you fill this out and you also attend 2 other of our professional development workshops, I'm going to send you the link to the whole series. Then you will be eligible for a customized resume review. You do also have to be a YouthMappers student or a hot data quality intern to be eligible for that. So just keep that in mind as well. Make sure you're using the same email address every time you fill that out, so that I know that it's the same person. All right, and I'm putting the link right now to the evaluation form in the chat. Okay. Awesome. Oh, Armel, I see your hand raised. Oh, yes. Okay. And Armel wants to know, is it possible to have trainings in French or documents transcribed in French for the needs of the Francophone communities? Yeah, this is something I've been definitely thinking about a lot. From my time when I lived in Guinea, I actually did some job application workshops, and those were in French. So I am hoping to translate some of these documents into French, since I do speak the language, not as well as I used to. So thank you for reminding me of that. And yeah, please keep an eye out, hopefully, for some translations of these slides as well. Good question. All right, Pragya wants to know, is it a good idea to send a follow-up email if you don't get a reply for the job you applied for? Yes, you absolutely want to send a follow-up email, because maybe the employer did send you a reply and they used the wrong email address, or it went into your spam folder. Maybe they just have gotten really busy, or something has changed in terms of their hiring needs and they haven't had a chance to reach out to you yet. You absolutely do want to send that follow-up email. It also shows your continued interest in the job. I know that I personally have considered whether someone followed up or not when making hiring decisions in the past, because I felt like the fact that they followed up really showed that they were passionate and excited about the job. Of course, you don't want to overdo it or send too many follow-ups, Be patient as well. People are busy and they're trying their best, but don't be afraid to follow up, very politely and just the way that I usually do this is I'll say something like, I'm wanting to follow up on X position that I applied for. Thank you in advance for reviewing my application. If you need any additional information from me, please let me know. Okay, and Lacine wants to know, what number page is recommended for the cover letter? Just one page. Yeah. I'm going to type my answers in the chat as well for those of you who might be more comfortable reading English. Anything else? Okay, well, you have my contact information, so please reach out if you have any follow-up questions or issues. Really hope to see you at the future sessions. And again, check out for your email. I will send you that link. Oh, we do have another question from Chisholm. What is the best text format for cover letter and CV? Example, PDF, RTF. I'm not familiar with RTF. I don't know what that document is, but usually I do these documents as like a Word document or a Google document, and then I convert them to a PDF. All right, well, I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you everyone so much for attending and for your participation. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for filling out the evaluation, and I hope to see you at future sessions.